Controversy concerning the San Jose State University women's volleyball team. 3 opposing colleges have now forfeited their matches against the Spartans over concerns about a transgender player.
Homeboy, I almost killed that girl.
2022, I was severely injured in a high school volleyball game by a transgender athlete on the opposing team. I suffered from a concussion and neck injury that to this day I'm still recovering from.
Okay, so now we're talking about volleyball, and is it fair to let biological men compete with biological women? Okay, this is Blair Fleming, a registered senior at San Jose State University. Fleming is a transgendered athlete who transitioned from male to female and joined the women's volleyball team. Now, before we get into the nuts and bolts of this particular story, I want to make it very clear on how I stand on this particular issue. Okay, I see it like this. There's a challenge we face. In sports, fairness holds a sacred place. Now, biological differences we can't ignore. They're the reason men's and women's leagues exist. Now, I feel for the trans athletes who want to play to join the games in their own unique way, but how do we ensure the field is fair when the physical advantages are clearly there? Now, this is not about bias or spreading hate, but keeping competitions fair and straight. And even some trans athletes admit this to be true, that competing may give them an edge undue.
People lifted, I volunteered, everyone was happy that I was there. And it really struck me that maybe my participation isn't necessarily fair. I mean, you know, there's science, whatever.
Now, every time I talk about this issue, emotions run deep. So I advocate for open dialogue to navigate this complex issue. But in my opinion, when it comes to women's sports, to keep things fair, biological men shouldn't be competing there. Now, with that out of the way, let's break down what's happening at San Jose State. Okay, so this started back in 2022 when Blair Fleming, the transgender athlete, was cleared to play on the women's volleyball team. Now, by early 2023, Blair's secret was out, and some of Fleming's teammates even started expressing concerns about safety during practice and even during games. And after learning that Blair was a man, other members of the team started being concerned about being in close personal quarters with Blair.
So I was here for about 2.5 months and nothing was said. And then I went to a food truck with one of my teammates and 2 of the men's basketball players at San Jose State. And I kind of overheard them talking while we were waiting for our food, talking about Blair being a man. And I kind of turned around and I was like, what are y'all talking about? And they were like, you don't know? And I was like, what are you talking about? And that's when everything kind of unfolded for me, and they told me what they knew, but still it was nowhere out in the open. No one talked about it. It was all just whispers behind closed doors.
Now, this is Brooke. She is co-captain of the San Jose State volleyball team where the transgender player is playing. And she has taken it upon herself to sue the NCAA to stop transgender athletes from participating in women's sports.
In late September, team co-captain Brooke Slusser joined a lawsuit challenging the NCAA and its transgender inclusion policy. In the lawsuit, Slusser claims one of her teammates is transgender, names her, and says the player shouldn't be on the team. Since then, 4 teams have forfeited their games against San Jose State.
It frankly has been heartbreaking to watch for our student athletes.
Thursday's game against SDSU was the first home game in nearly 3 weeks.
Okay, let me pause this video and ask you a question. Have you used Google Chrome's Incognito Mode between 2016 and 2023? If so, you may be entitled to up to $5,000 in compensation. Now, if you use Incognito Mode, Google was secretly tracking your data despite their promises that your search history and personal information was not going to be collected or tracked.
Collects 39 individual data points on you, and so this is all about data. They're trying to figure out how they can get access to it. So creating this Incognito Mode was supposed to be a way that they were not capturing or retaining your data. That's what we all believed, but they were capturing it. What Google says is we were capturing it, but we weren't keeping it on an individual basis. But the individuals that filed suit was saying no. We signed up for Incognito Mode believing that when we used it, you weren't capturing our data at all.
What's the next thing, right? So speaking of what's the next thing, what happens to Google now? Are they at risk of more lawsuits from this?
100%.
So if you've used Google's Incognito Mode during the period of 2016 to 2023, you could be eligible to join the lawsuit at no cost to you. Visit browserclaim.com to see if you qualify. There are no upfront costs, no hidden fees. Simply fill out the form and start your claim. Now, I need you to understand, participating in any lawsuit doesn't guarantee compensation, but you do have the right to seek compensation if your privacy was violated. Now, full disclosure, my firm isn't the only one involved. For instance, one of the largest firms in the country, Morgan & Morgan, is also asking for clients for this lawsuit. Now, for more information and to get started, visit browserclaim.com today to protect your rights and hold Google accountable. Now, the link is in the description and in the pinned comment. Now, back to the video. Now, as you heard, as soon as other teams started finding out that there was a biological male playing on the women's volleyball team, then they started forfeiting games because they felt that it was an unfair advantage that their female participants had to play against the biological male.
In the middle of an undefeated start of the season for San Jose State women's volleyball, it's the games the team has not played that are creating a cloud of controversy. Boise State announced in a statement that they would not play its scheduled match against SJSU on September 28th, accepting a forfeit and a loss. Southern Utah also refused to play the Spartans 2 weeks earlier.
Fourth school has forfeited a game against San Jose State's volleyball team, and the university is stepping up security for players. This is all part of an apparent protest against allowing transgender athletes on college sports teams.
Transgender athlete appears to be at the center of a decision by Utah State University's women's volleyball team to not play against another team.
That match is still a few weeks off, and they are now the fourth university to make this very same move.
Now, this brings us to the lawsuit filed by female athletes at the NCAA level, suing the NCAA for allowing biological men to compete against biological women in sports, saying that it violates federal law. Now, first, they claim that the NCAA's policy allowing transgender athletes to compete in women's sports violates Title IX by failing to provide equal athletic opportunities to both biological females and males. See, Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 prohibits sex-based discrimination in educational programs or activities receiving federal financial assistance. Title IX regulations, specifically 34 CFR section 106.41, require institutions to provide equal athletic opportunities to members of both sexes. The female athletes argue that the NCAA's transgender eligibility policy, which allows transgender women, biological males, to compete in women's sport, deprives them of equal athletic opportunities. They claim that this violates the intent of Title IX, which was designated to ensure female athletes have the same opportunities as their male counterparts, not allowing their male counterpart to dominate female sports. Now, the female athletes argue that the NCAA's policies undermine the principles of fair play and safety in women's sports, creating a competitive disadvantage for biological female athletes. And the lawsuit even points to the clear physical advantages that male athletes have over female athletes. And if you think about how life was before Title IX and after Title IX, this all makes sense. Before Title IX, there was, let's say, one basketball team. And if you were a boy or a girl, you try out for the basketball team. And 99.99999% of the time, who were participating in sports and females were not. But after Title IX, then you had a boys team and then a girls team. And boys were not allowed to play on the girls team because of this advantage. If you didn't segregate the sexes, then women wouldn't really be able to compete in athletics because they would always lose to the boys. So now, there are always two sides to the story. Let me introduce you to the arguments by the LGBTQ plus community on why they believe that Title IX actually protects transgendered women or biological men who want to compete in the women's category.
500 pieces of legislation against us all over the country.
Trans activists and supporters say the match forfeits amount to an attack on equal rights.
Title IX is a protection of women, and trans women are part of that protection.
Okay, so obviously you guys know which side I agree with, but I do want to make one quick point, because sometimes people will say, well, if you don't allow trans women to compete with biological women, then they can't compete at all. And that's just not true. They can compete in the men's category. They just choose not to because obviously that would be harder. And one thing that you don't really see a lot is you don't see it going in the reverse, where you see a trans man, a biological woman who transitions to being a male, compete in men's competitions or even win anything because of the biological differences. And I think that's something that's very important to note, because on one side, the trans activists are trying to act like just because you say you're a woman, that makes you a biological woman. And that's just not the case. And if that was the case, then we would see it happening in the opposite direction, which we do not see at all. We don't see trans men competing competing at the highest level against biological men in sports because of those physical disadvantages. So let me know how you feel in the comment section. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me if I just totally missed this whole scenario. If you believe I'm being transphobic, because you're going to see those comments in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, do all the great YouTube stuff. I'm Nate the Lawyer, and I'm going to see you in the next one. Peace.